Welcome back to another Kerbal Space Program video, guys. It has been a long time since I have said those words, and it is good to be back. It's been a long time since I've played Kerbal Space Program, let alone make a Kerbal Space Program video. But I'm excited to be playing, and we're going to go to Eeloo today, which is a highly requested destination that a lot of people were asking for. So yeah, it's been a year and a half, I think, since my last upload. I've been really busy. I'm going to college now, and have not had the time to upload any Kerbal content. But with KSP 2 coming out, I do have a little bit of free time within these next couple months. I'm hoping to upload a couple videos here on KSP, and hopefully KSP 2. I'm looking to try that out. The mission today is to Eeloo. It's going to be pretty simple. We have a basic lander here. The lander is using a Terrier engine. Typically I'd use a aerospike for these kinds of things, but the Terrier's efficient and it's Eeloo, so as long as we get our burn done nice and early, we should be okay. I did the lander there, extending the landing legs while I do it, just to make sure it is long enough. With Eeloo, it's not really a problem, because you can do EVA and fly up with your EVA pack. But with planets like Eve or Lathe, if we were to go to a higher mass, higher gravity planet, you do want to make sure that your landing legs and ladders reach. If your ladders aren't long enough, your Kerbals might get stuck on the surface. That's happened to me on Lathe with some SSTOs in the past, and it is not fun having to reload a save after you've spent hours flying all the way out there. So this mission is going to use 5 nuclear engines. It is really over budgeted for Eeloo. I definitely did not do the most efficient flying or the most efficient building here, I guess, but I wasn't trying to. It's been a long time since I've played Kerbal Space Program, as I've said, and I was just trying to get to Eeloo. I did not use any gravity assists in this playthrough or in this mission, although I could have. I did get an encounter with Kerbin and an encounter with Joule that I could have used to save a little bit of Delta V, but it's better to keep things simple. I almost forgot RCS thrusters on this craft as well. I do go ahead and add those in, but you don't really need the S thrusters. Are kind of an extra. They're good to have for docking, but when the docking ports are on the ends of the crafts like that, it's not essential. It's good to have for small orbital adjustments later down the line when we are coming into back to Kerbin or trying to get an encounter with Eeloo. Just because when we're making those very small burns, the RCS can make even smaller, so it does help. But yeah, we're getting ready to launch here. The rocket looks pretty good on the launch pad. We're using 12 vector engines, pretty simple rocket to launch this into space. Now, the rocket sounds work for the launch and for the first part of this video, but they will cut out at some point. I think it's a conflict with the mod. Hopefully I'll have that fixed by the next video. But the mods make the game look pretty, so we have to have the mods, right? But yeah, unfortunately the engine sound does cut out. It was on my end as well. But that's alright, so we're going to go and shoot up, tilt 45 degrees by 10 kilometers, although we're already past that. Launching into space, our Kerbals look absolutely wonderful. They're excited to go to Eeloo. I think all of my main named Kerbals, besides for Valentina, are on a space station far, far away in this playthrough. So just Valentina and some random Kerbals to go along with us to Eeloo. I think only Valentina will end up going down to the surface. And here we have one final burn to finally circularize our orbit and try and get it nice and straight before we go and burn to Eeloo. So yeah, as I said, we could have used some gravity assists. We could be going to Joule. A lot of people use Tyloo as a gravity assist, or I don't know if it's a lot of people. I've used Tyloo as a gravity assist before for Eeloo missions on the way back typically, but I did not on this mission. It was not worth it. I had plenty of Delta V. The one downside coming in from such an eccentric orbit at such a high speed was we did end up having to do a couple passes with our heat shield, but you'll see that later in the video. So we're making our maneuver node here. The maneuver nodes were giving me a lot of problems on this mission. I was getting really frustrated, so you might see it cut a few times as I skip over some of my frustrating maneuver node making. But I do eventually get the encounters. It's not hard. You just play around with it. Your anti-normal, your normal, your radial in, or your radial out, until you get your markers as close as you can. It's not really important to get an encounter while you're still in Kerbin's sphere of influence. In fact, I would say don't, because it'll be harder. Getting an encounter in Kerbin's sphere of influence, you might run into Minmus, you might run into the Mon, and also just Kerbin, it gets in the way, and you can't see as far down in your orbit, so it's better to just burn until you're close enough to Eeloo, you have rough encounters, and then clean it up and get your inclination right after you're already out of Kerbin's sphere of influence. It'll just be easier. It might not necessarily be the most efficient, but it'll be a lot easier to get your encounters. So if you're struggling with that, then try and just wait until after you're outside of Kerbin's sphere of influence. So as you can see here, we're burning. We actually get an encounter with Jewel for a little bit, just burn past that. I didn't quite see indicators, but there we go. Kerbin fading off into the sunset. We'll be back. It won't be for many, many years, though. Alright, so we're in interplanetary space. Pretty awesome. Now, I did already make the maneuver node around Eeloo. I skipped over that maneuver node, but it's pretty simple. Just drag your anti-normal and your normal and your radial in and your radial out. You don't even have to drag them if you have the encounter already. Just slowly get it as close and lower your periaps. And then here we go, we're burning retrograde, and we're at Eeloo. I kind of forgot how boring Eeloo looks, to be honest. I don't know if it's a mod issue, if parallax might not be working, or if it's not updated, but the surface terrain kind of looks boring. I was kind of expecting more excitement, but a lot of people like this planet, so here we are. We are going to just lower our orbit, do a couple passes. We don't have to do it all. 20 kilometers is fine. There's no atmosphere on Eeloo. I would have gone for an interesting surface feature like a canyon, but I wasn't really focusing where I was landing at the time, so we just landed on an ice plateau. But here we go, and we're in orbit around Eeloo. Valentina's going to climb over into the lander can and back away from the mothership and go down and descend for her landing. Now, easiest way to land on bodies like this, I would say, is just to cancel out all of your horizontal speed first, so you're only dropping, and then you can just literally fall straight down. It just makes it easier so you're not careening sideways as you're trying to land. If you're burning retrograde the entire time, that might happen. So as we fall down here, I'm looking at the suicide burn countdown next to the altimeter in the top right. It's not super accurate, so I will burn a little early, but it's a pretty smooth landing, and we have these 4 big landing legs to bolster our landing as we come down. And here we are on the surface of Eeloo. We'll go ahead and lower that ladder there, take some screenshots, and have Valentina climb down and plant the flag on Eeloo. It's been a while since I've landed on Eeloo. We didn't bring any deployed science, so we don't have a lot to do here. Just plant the flag. We'll go ahead and take our EVA sample and our EVA report. And then we'll climb back into our cabin and get ready to ascend back to the ship and return to Kerbin. Because Valentina's already been on this mission for a few years now. She wants to get home. Alright, so we're waiting, and we warp until, and I did go ahead and launch here and launch in the wrong direction, but that's okay. You know, sometimes mistakes happen in Kerbal Space Program, and I could have reloaded a quick save, but plenty of fuel, so I just quick 180, whip it back around, and we're going the right way now. Perfect, perfect. And that actually might have helped our encounter a little bit, because I might have launched a little too early, so that was good. Easiest way to rendezvous here when you're trying to meet back up with your mothership for an Apollo-style landing on any body. Easiest way, just burn up, try and get your indicators as close as you can, and then burn retrograde relative to your, and so you will cancel out all of your speed, and then burn towards your target. And that will bring you closer, and so here we go. And we're almost ready to dock. We're just going to assign both those docking ports to each other, so they can point each other, and we'll dock together. Now, I didn't need to do this, but I went ahead and transferred all of the fuel from the lander into the mothership, just to get any little bit of extra delta V that we could out of the lander, and then we'll go ahead and ditch it into blue deep space. No one's on it, and it's not on a collision course, so it is space junk in a way. I'm not really worried about it. We could delete it from the tracking station, but it's nice to have a little piece of memorabilia to remember this mission by in space. So we'll leave the lander there, and we'll get ready for our trip home to Kerbin. I'm sure all of our Kerbals here are really eager to get home. So we're going to burn retrograde relative to Eeloo's orbit to try and get encounter with Kerbin. We were not able to. We tried to get our indicators really close, but we were not able to get that encounter. We ended up waiting and skipping an orbit ahead, so that added a couple years to the mission. Poor Kerbals. But that's alright. I'm sure they had plenty of snacks on board, and they didn't mind at all. Yeah, a lot of fussing around with the maneuver nodes in this episode, but I would recommend it if you're having trouble with maneuver nodes. Easier missions like the MUN just build up your core practice and you learn how to do it pretty easily. And then bigger missions like this for interplanetary, even Joule. Just send a craft with like an ion craft to Joule and practice your gravity assists and your maneuver nodes in there. And it's great practice to just learn the mechanics and learn how to easily make maneuver nodes for what you want to do. And it is still finicky, but we do eventually get it, and we're able to get ready to burn out of Eeloo's orbit. So, goodbye, Eeloo. You were good to us, but it's time to go home. So we're burning, and we're going to go home to Kerbin. This maneuver node is in a couple of parts. We couldn't get it exactly on, because Kerbin's very hard to get to from so far out at this inclination. Eeloo is a tilted planet. It's at a different inclination to the rest of the planets, sort of like Pluto is to our own planets. So it's hard to get to, and it takes a lot of delta V to get to and get back from. So we'll just skip. That's the extra orbit I was talking about coming up on our maneuver node, and we did actually time warp past it, but on these scales it really doesn't matter. And there's our maneuver node done, and we have an encounter with Kerbin. Now, since we are coming in from such a high angle at such a high speed, we're going to be coming in very fast, and we don't want to come in directly because our Kerbals will burn up. We won't bleed off enough speed, and we won't be able to open our parachutes, and we're just going to die. It's not going to be a good time. So, we're going to want to do multiple passes to slow it. You can see this is what the RCS thrusters are good for. I'm trying to get the orbit just right so it's not too low and not too high. I'm aiming for 30,000 meters or 30 kilometers here. It was a little lower, a little too high, a little low, but 30 kilometers is good. The heat shields in this game are very overpowered, so that'll be plenty to burn off, and we'll do one pass. It'll slow us down, and we'll get in an orbit, and on our second pass we will descend into Kerbin. So here we are, and we're getting ready for our first pass. Finally eject that part of the mothership, and it's just the heat shield and the capsule now coming in for this first pass. Spinning. I like spinning because I think it disperses the heat, but it might not actually do anything. Passing. I'm sure the Kerbals are looking down and they think that they're excited to be home. I think this mission lasted close to 10 years, so the Kerbals have been away for quite a while. And on this final pass, they'll come home. Deploying the drogue chutes, and we're finally coming home to a rest in the sea, splashing down with our Kerbals. And there we go. So thank you guys so much for watching. It's been a long time since I've made a KSP video, but it was really fun to do this one. So I hope you guys enjoyed watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Later.